What unfolds when a self-made leader swaps his polished attire for a worn apron, only to overhear an employee ridiculing an elderly patron? Xavier Stenson faced the bathroom mirror in a dilapidated motel on the outskirts of the city. The man's grey stubble, wiry hair hidden beneath a baseball cap, and a faded red polo shirt adorned with a name tag that read Ray were almost unrecognizable to him. The disguise was flawless. 17 quick-service restaurants. That was the creation he had crafted with his own hands over the past 13 years. From a humble food truck to a thriving regional chain. Yet recently an unsettling feeling lingered. Sales at several stores had declined. Reviews from location number 9 on the south side have taken a turn for the worse, focusing less on the food and more on the behavior of the staff. He attempted to engage the store manager in conversation, but she dismissed it as merely the complaints of disgruntled customers. The district manager echoed those sentiments, yet Xavier sensed that there was more to the story than met the eye, prompting him to uncover the truth firsthand. It had been more than 2 years since he last set foot in Store 9. The majority of the personnel were brought on board following that event. They had never encountered him before. With the implementation of the new third-party hiring system for entry-level positions, the arrival of a new trainee named Ray for the on-the-job evaluation would go unquestioned. He entered the store shortly. After 9 a.m., the senior breakfast rush was already in full swing. The location appeared sufficiently tidy. A tall supervisor in his early 30s issued commands from behind the counter. The name tag read Bryce. Not a single smile crossed his face. A young woman at the register caught sight of Xavier and offered a subtle wave. "It seems you are Ray. My name is Mayla. You're following my lead today, correct?" On the first day, Xavier remarked, his voice carrying a slightly gruffer, more seasoned tone. Mayla exhibited remarkable speed, courtesy, and a calm demeanor. She managed the lengthy queue with grace, ensuring that each individual felt attended to without any sense of haste. Xavier remained silent, observing her graceful movements and the way she warmly acknowledged the older customers by name. An aged gentleman leaning on his cane made his way to the counter with a slow, deliberate shuffle. "A single coffee and 2 soft eggs, please." "Certainly, Mr. Harold," Mayla replied with a gentle warmth. "Text." Harold nodded with a smile, asking if you wanted jelly with your toast. As she processed the order, Bryce leaned in closer to a younger team member and remarked in a hushed but clear tone, "Why does this ancient relic keep showing up here?" He likely overlooks the fact that he has already eaten. The child let out a soft laugh. He arrives just like he does every day. Bryce chuckled heartily. Perhaps he believes this is the drugstore. Xavier stood still, caught in a moment of disbelief. He observed a fleeting twitch on Harold's face. The elderly gentleman remained silent. He simply grabbed his receipt and stepped aside. Mayla pivoted rigidly to face Bryce. That was not amusing. Bryce dismissed her with a wave. "Take it easy, the guy's been around for ages. I can hardly hear at all. Xavier's not anything yet." He craved a deeper understanding. The following hours unfolded in a chaotic whirlwind of requests, accidents, and charred hash browns. Mayla always maintained her composure. She stepped in for a colleague who was running behind schedule. She even managed to correct a drive-through order. Bryce had made a mistake without retorting. Xavier observed an additional detail. Bryce seldom offered assistance. He rested against the counter, casually scrolling through his phone, only engaging when the district manager, Greg, made an appearance. As Greg entered the room, Bryce immediately adjusted his posture, plastered on a forced smile, and declared in a voice that carried across the space, "Good morning, boss. We've been overwhelmed, but the team is excelling. Ray is thriving." Greg acknowledged with a thumbs up and departed in just 5 minutes. The instant the door closed, Bryce whispered, "What a fool." By the afternoon, Xavier had witnessed all he needed to. He ventured outside for a moment, wandering near the dumpster at the rear. His chest was constricted. He placed his trust in his managers. He had placed his faith in the system. However, witnessing an elderly man endure such humiliation, along with observing a dedicated worker like Mayla being let go, ignited a fire within him. He returned inside and observed the dinner shift begin to unfold. Mayla finally seized her moment of respite, perched quietly with a granola bar and a soda in hand. Xavier settled into the booth opposite her. "Do you always find a way to defend people like that?" he inquired. She gazed upward, taken aback. "What do you mean?" "Similar to Bryce. He offers no assistance, treats customers poorly." She shrugged, indicating that you take care of his chaos. "He holds the position of supervisor." "That doesn't make it right." Mayla hesitated. "There isn't a great deal I can accomplish. I require the hours. I have rent to pay and my younger brothers are here with me now." Xavier nodded in silence. He sensed the burden of that. She once found herself in his shoes, getting by, taking on the tasks that others shunned. Yet another moment slipped by. "May I share something with you?" he inquired. She cast a wary look. "Of course I own this place." Mayla blinked. "Excuse me?" He removed his cap. "I am Xavier Stenson. 13 years ago, I launched this company from the back of a truck. I currently manage 17 stores. However, I believe I neglected to inquire about the individuals who truly ensure their operation." Mayla gazed at him, taken aback. "I went incognito because I had doubts about the information I was receiving, and today confirmed my suspicions." She cast her gaze downward, then lifted it once more. "What comes next?" Xavier rose to his feet. "At this moment, I will complete this shift. However, come tomorrow morning, Bryce will engage in a conversation unlike any other, and you," he paused, "will receive all that you have rightfully earned and beyond." Mayla's eyes brimmed with tears. She swiftly blinked them away, nodding in response. And Xavier pivoted back toward the kitchen, determination in his stride, because this was more than just about Harold. It was about restoring the essence of what he had crafted. Step by step, one store at a time. Xavier made his way there an hour ahead of the opening the following morning. The parking lot lay desolate, save for a nondescript grey sedan awkwardly occupying 2 spaces. Within, the illumination was dimmed to a soft glow. A solitary prep cook named Louis was slicing onions in the rear, earbuds in place, moving with a familiar cadence. The aroma of fresh vegetables mingled with the rich scent of frying oil, creating a distinctive atmosphere. Xavier entered through the side door, giving a nod to Louis, who remained oblivious to his presence. He approached. The modest office used his master key to unlock the door, and settled into the chair typically claimed by Bryce. He remained upright. He had no need to settle in. At 6:30, the front door creaked open. Bryce entered, clad in the familiar branded polo, his badge askew, a coffee cradled in one hand and his phone grasped in the other. He failed to notice Xavier immediately. Upon his arrival, he halted abruptly in the corridor, narrowing his eyes. "You lost?" Bryce inquired, his tone relaxed. Xavier clasped his hands on the desk and shut the door. Bryce's smile wavered. "Hold. Hon, who did I say to close the door?" The gravity in Xavier's voice stripped away the final traces of arrogance from Bryce's expression. He entered and closed the door behind him. Xavier Stenson introduced himself with a confident tone, stating his name clearly. "This company is mine. Take a seat." Bryce appeared as if he had ingested something jagged. He took a seat. Xavier maintained a calm demeanor. There was no necessity for him to do so. "Yesterday morning, he remarked that you made a quip about a customer who's been frequenting this place longer than you've been employed here. You accomplished it in front of the team, with great volume. You embarrassed someone who has faith in this establishment enough to invest their limited resources here." Bryce began to speak, but Xavier lifted a hand to silence him. "You haven't spoken yet. Pay attention." Bryce closed his lips tightly. "I observed you overlook urgent matters. Peruse your phone and allow your team to rectify your errors. I observed the swift transformation in you the moment Greg entered the room. I observed you feign. Your perception of cleverness is of no concern to me. Your actions have diminished those around you." Bryce's gaze flicked to the wall, then returned. "Honestly, that wasn't my intention. It was simply that I requested silence." Xavier rose to his feet. He remained still. He conveyed his message without the need for any physical motion. "Your time here is complete. In effect immediately. The last payment will be sent via mail. Stay away." Bryce rose as well, his face aglow with color. "Are you really serious?" Xavier approached with a sense of ease. "Do you genuinely believe it was?" "Without consequence." Bryce fixed his gaze on him, his jaw clenched yet remained silent. "Please place your keys on the desk." Bryce extracted the lanyard from his pocket and let it fall, producing a sharp clatter. The sound of his footsteps reverberated through the hallway as he departed. Xavier held his breath until the front door clicked shut once more, then released a slow exhale through his nose. He reached for the store phone and made the call. "Hey Greg, it's Xavier. Please be at store 9 in 20 minutes. Grab a notepad. And check your excuses at the entrance." He ended the call before Greg had a chance to reply. At 7:30, Mayla entered, her expression one of surprise upon spotting him behind the counter. She spoke with a hint of hesitation. "I thought you were merely observing." As I was, she cast a quick look toward the office. "Is Bryce really not coming back?" Her gaze darted across his features, probing for an elusive spark. He failed to provide any comfort. He presented the facts, and she nodded slowly, without any words of praise. "All right, I could use your assistance," he stated. "Not for an eternity, just for today. We're operating without a supervisor, and I have more faith in you than anyone else here. I haven't received training for the shift lead position. Leadership isn't defined by a title. It's about understanding and respecting others." Without uttering a word, she brushed past him and began reviewing the prep list. Greg showed up 5 minutes later, panting, with his tie all askew. "What's happening?" he inquired, entering the office. Xavier remained focused on the tablet that showcased the store's customer feedback from the past 30 days. "For months, you've been gathering reports from this location," he remarked. In a moment of uncertainty, Greg found himself overlooking a situation where one of his leads was openly disrespecting a customer. Bryce remained unmentioned, and none of the grievances identified him specifically. "Your responsibility, Greg, is to make those connections. Don't wait for someone to lay it all out for you. I could begin conducting random audits." "You ought to have started by now," Greg remarked. Xavier turned the tablet toward him and asked, "What do you want me to do?" "These are the team members who deserve to be retained. These individuals have shown a pattern of ongoing delays, problematic attitudes, or unaccounted for absences. Please arrange one-on-one meetings with each member of the team by the end of the week. I expect detailed written evaluations rather than simple checkboxes." Greg gave a swift nod. "Beginning next month, you'll be moving between stores for 2-day assignments. Without a clipboard or an assistant, it's just you in uniform, collaborating alongside them." Greg's eyelids fluttered momentarily. "Are you asking if I should?" "Indeed, that is everything." He departed from Greg in the office and made his way back to the front. Mayla guided a trainee through the register system, detailing the process of correcting a double entry without requiring a manager's intervention. She communicated with clarity, maintaining a humble tone. The child genuinely appeared to be engaged in what was being said. The lunch crowd began to filter in by 11. Xavier took charge of the fryer. Years had passed since he last attempted it, yet his hands still held the memory. He was indifferent to the grease or the heat. He was attentive to the quality of the food, ensuring the line progressed smoothly and that customers felt at ease rather than bewildered. A mother with 2 young children made her way to the counter. One was weeping. The other held tightly to a wrinkled dollar bill. Mayla bent down and whispered something soft that brought smiles to both children's faces. Without a moment's hesitation, she replaced the spilled drink and offered an additional napkin. Xavier locked eyes with the mother. She silently expressed her gratitude. Once the chaos subsided, he discreetly led Mayla to a quiet spot by the dry storage. "I seek an individual who boldly voices their thoughts, one who acts with integrity, without needing a title to guide their actions. I cannot extend a promotion to you due to the recent events. I'm presenting this opportunity based on your existing qualities." She observed him intently. "What type of promotion are we discussing?" "Assistant. Manager position available. Complete training provided. Competitive salary. Benefits commence after 30 days. You would also be taking the reins on a portion of the hiring process. Her brow knitted in concern. I have no experience with interviews. I will ensure you have access to all the resources you need to thrive. Her lips remained uncurled. She simply nodded once. I will accept it. Xavier extended his hand. She shook it with a firm grip without a hint of hesitation. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the store's doors clicked shut, Xavier strolled through the dining area, taking in the quiet ambiance of the space. The stillness enveloped the surroundings. The booths were immaculate. The lights hummed softly. He occupied the same table that Harold had utilized the previous day. The receipt from his breakfast remained carefully tucked behind one of the salt shakers, folded into a precise triangle. He lifted it and gazed at the timestamp. A soft rap echoed against the glass. Harold stood outside, clad in a windbreaker, clutching a paper bag. Xavier pushed the door open. I was just passing by, Harold remarked. I was considering that I might have left this behind. Remnants from my daughter's culinary creations. Excessive soup. Xavier grasped the bag. The air was pleasantly warm. Thank you, he remarked. Harold gave a slight nod. The new girl has talent. She certainly is. Harold straightened his collar. The atmosphere seemed altered today. Xavier surveyed his surroundings. It ought to. A moment of silence enveloped them. Harold doffed his hat and strolled into the twilight. Xavier lingered for a moment, clutching the bag attuned to the soft murmur of the building. There remained tasks to complete. Yet, the base remained robust. The individuals remained a valuable investment, and he was determined not to overlook that once more. The next Monday, Xavier reached the regional office shortly after dawn. It had been more than 4 months since he last set foot in that building. The atmosphere was serene, with the familiar sounds of typing and hushed discussions yet to break the silence of the hour. That was precisely the way he envisioned it. He required a moment for contemplation. He positioned himself at the rear of the modest conference room, his gaze fixed on the whiteboard adorned with vibrant schedules and monthly sales objectives. The figures weren't bad, yet they failed to convey the true narrative. A business might achieve its profit goals, yet still risk losing its essence. He retrieved a legal pad and started jotting down names. He was already well acquainted with the executives and franchise leads. These were the dedicated individuals he had encountered while working incognito. More than just Mayla, a dishwasher in Store 6 who put in double shifts without a word of complaint. A night cashier at Store 12, resourcefully bringing her own cleaning supplies due to the store's reduced budget. He had lost so much time. Allow protocols and documentation to take the place of intuition as the outer door slowly opened with a creak. Greg entered, balancing 2 coffees in his hands, his appearance suggesting a restless night. He placed one in front of Xavier without a word of inquiry. I completed the initial round of interviews, Greg remarked, settling into the chair opposite. Him. Completed the entire team for Store 9. You were correct regarding the gaps. Xavier reclined, allowing himself a moment of respite. What voids? Morale is low. Turnovers exceeded my expectations. Several of them mentioned that they had been compensating for Bryce's errors for months. One even mentioned contemplating resignation last week, but chose to remain due to Mayla. Xavier drummed, the tip of his pen against the notepad. Could you provide details about the hiring process? Are you still allowing managers to hire their friends without proper evaluation? Greg paused, uncertainty flickering in his mind. At times. It's more efficient. Being quick doesn't equate to being clever, Xavier remarked. I request a comprehensive review of all hires from the past 6 months, along with a performance comparison. Greg nodded, expressing a desire to disrupt any existing pattern. I will retrieve the data. I prefer not to have data. I seek specifics, names, dates, and results. Greg cast his gaze downward. Xavier acknowledged this and placed the pad aside. A transformation is on the horizon for our operations, extending beyond just Store 9. Greg lifted an eyebrow in curiosity. Are you considering going incognito once more? Xavier replied with a firm no. That's not the focus. There should be no need for a mask to uncover reality. The framework ought to bring it to light. If it fails, the framework is compromised. He rose and made his way to the window. The city began to stir from its slumber. The traffic lights pulsed with intermittent flashes. The skyline was enveloped in a soft glow of the morning sun. I seek direct field reports from employees, bypassing managers entirely, utilizing an anonymous channel with a straightforward form, eliminating any gatekeeping of feedback. Greg inclined his body, eager and attentive. Do you believe they'll put it to use? They will respond if we demonstrate that we are attentive. Greg chose not to engage in a dispute. That afternoon, Xavier made his way back to Store 9, unmasked and without the element of surprise. He joined the staff in the break room as the shift changed. The space felt confined, with a battered vending machine buzzing softly in the corner and a bench that groaned under the weight of those who sat upon it. A handful of employees appeared taken aback as he entered, yet he made no speech, no declaration. I settled into a spot by the wall and bided my time. Mayla walked in with a clipboard in hand, surveying the room briefly before taking a seat opposite him. Her expression had shifted, revealing a newfound clarity and intent. "Are you intending to carry this out at every store?" she inquired. "Perhaps," Xavier remarked. "It all hinges on the outcome of this one." A young person in a drive-through headset rested against the vending machine. Xavier nodded, confirming that he was indeed the owner. "Understood. Could you explain why we receive only 2 uniforms while working 5 days a week?" Mayla cast a glance at the child, yet Xavier lifted a hand in response. "That's reasonable," he remarked. "You ought to have received 3, that's sincere. The reductions in funding have been excessive. This week I'm making the necessary adjustments." A woman in her 40s, identified by her name tag as Jaylene, interjected into the conversation. "What's the deal with the fryer?" "Oil has been seeping. Out for weeks now, we continue to document it." Xavier glanced over at Mayla. "Is that really the case?" She gave a slight nod. "The maintenance ticket has been submitted on 2 occasions. No reply received." Xavier took out his phone and jotted down a note. "I will take it upon myself to follow up. If it isn't resolved within 72 hours, we will provide a replacement." Silence enveloped the room once more. Gradually, additional hands began to rise. Inquiries regarding the lack of supplies, identifying available time slots, even the malfunctioning soap dispenser in the restroom. Xavier remained silent. He failed to stand up for the company. After 20 minutes, he simply put everything to paper and stood up. "I'm not here to gain any advantage," he stated. "I find myself here due to a lapse in memory regarding something significant. Regardless of the size this company reaches, its success hinges on your conviction that it's worth your presence. I allowed barriers to accumulate between us. That is evolving at this moment." He exited without pausing for recognition. Silence reigned, accompanied only by a subtle nod of understanding. The following morning, as Xavier was going through vendor contracts, he received a message from Jaylene. She utilized the new anonymous reporting system to submit an image of the fryer. The oil leak had escalated overnight, and an unfortunate slip had occurred. No injuries reported, yet this marks the 3rd near miss. He reached out to the equipment supplier directly and terminated the repair ticket, requested a complete replacement, settled the expedited fee. By the week's conclusion, it was successfully installed. Jaylene sent another message, this time featuring a thumbs-up photo of the new machine. Xavier remained silent. He wished to keep the focus away from himself. On that Friday, he convened with the other regional owners. 4 individuals oversaw numerous stores under the brand's umbrella. They gathered around a sleek table in a modern co-working space, sipping bottled water and perusing quarterly reports. "You've been living off the grid lately," one of them, a man named Deshawn, remarked. "I understand you let go of a supervisor without prior notice." "I did," Xavier stated. "About what?" With a furrowed brow, Deshawn expressed his discontent at the lack of respect shown to a customer. "That's quite a restrictive hold." Xavier cast his gaze upon him. This wasn't the initial occurrence. For the first time, someone in a position of authority actually took notice. Another collaborator, Alina, leaned in. "Do you believe we're all overlooking things like that? If we only visit stores once a quarter, we're missing out on everything happening around us." They adjusted their positions. In the chairs, Xavier pressed on. "I'm not requesting that you operate incognito. So I'm requesting 3 days each month in uniform with no meetings, just focusing on the work at hand. Deshawn gave a slight shake of his head. That approach lacks scalability. It's not about size. It revolves around culture. That's not something you can delegate, Alina observed him closely. Do you genuinely believe this will have any lasting impact? It has indeed, Xavier remarked, and if it doesn't persist, we're creating something empty. Silence enveloped the room. As he strolled back to his car, Xavier caught sight of a recognizable silhouette across the parking lot. Harold sat on a bench outside a pharmacy, leisurely sipping from a paper cup. A pouch of medicine rested next to him. Xavier made his way across the lot. Harold raised his gaze. I was surprised to find you here. I might express a similar sentiment. Harold gently touched the surface of the bench. Take a seat if you have a moment. Xavier took action. They lingered in quietude for a brief moment. Harold inclined his head thoughtfully. That girl, Mayla, is in charge now. She is at the forefront of it. Indeed, that sounds positive, Harold remarked. The atmosphere has shifted. It's not more boisterous, merely more constant. Xavier inclined his head with deliberation. That is our goal. Harold savored another sip. Individuals recall the emotions you evoke in them. That's the sole section that remains memorable. Xavier remained silent. There was no necessity for him to do so. He remained in that spot until the sun sank beneath the skyline, and the streetlights flickered on with a soft hum. In the month that followed, Store 9 appeared and resonated as an entirely transformed environment. The transformations were not the result of a renovation or a rebranding effort. No fresh indications, no eye-catching phrases were present. Yet, the atmosphere held a calm resilience, as if something broken had been mended and supported by those who knew the essence of creating anew. In the break room, a fresh schedule was displayed on the corkboard. It exhibited a greater level of cleanliness and harmony. No one was pulling 6 consecutive closing shifts anymore. Mayla stood by the fridge, clipboard secured under her arm, as she went over a delivery log with Lewis, who had recently stepped into the role of kitchen lead. His grasp of English was minimal, yet she articulated her words deliberately, gesturing to particular line items until he responded with assurance. Next week, we'll be changing our supplier for the eggs, she mentioned. Fewer instances of breakage, and they are offering us a more favorable rate for bulk orders. Lewis lightly drummed his fingers on the list. We continue to have the same delivery day, Tuesday mornings, but I'll reach out to the route manager if there are any changes. Lewis flashed a thumbs up before heading back to the prep station. Xavier lingered at the edge of the hallway, arms folded, observing the interaction unfold without intervening. He was absent from oversight. He was present to lend an ear. He entered the kitchen and took a pair of gloves from the dispenser. The morning team had reported in short, and the register was already overwhelmed. He seamlessly adapted to the flow, managing orders effortlessly without inquiring about the function of each button. Even now, years after stepping away from the line, he still recalled the art of interpreting the rhythm of a breakfast rush. Once the wave receded, he took a towel and began to clean the front counter. The familiar faces began to arrive. Some he knew by sight, while others were recognized by their unique rhythms. A woman clad in a navy windbreaker, consistently dividing a single biscuit meal between her twins. A once diligent bus driver, meticulous in counting exact change before placing an order. Then Harold made his entrance. This time he didn't have his cane. Still sluggish, yet more erect. He surveyed the counter, noticed Xavier, and offered a brief nod before joining the line. The coffee's fresh, Xavier remarked as Harold approached the front. Harold let out a soft laugh. I would certainly hope so. Authority actually took notice. Another collaborator, Alina, leaned in. Do you believe we're all overlooking things like that? If we only visit stores once a quarter, we're missing out on everything happening around us. They adjusted their positions in the chairs. Xavier pressed on. I'm not requesting that you operate incognito. I'm requesting 3 days each month in uniform, with no meetings, just focusing on the work at hand. Deshawn gave a slight shake of his head. That approach lacks scalability. It's not about size. It revolves around culture. That's not something you can delegate, Alina observed him closely. Do you genuinely believe this will have any lasting impact? It has indeed, Xavier remarked, and if it doesn't persist, we're creating something empty. Silence enveloped the room. As he strolled back to his car, Xavier caught sight of a recognizable silhouette across the parking lot. Harold sat on a bench outside a pharmacy, leisurely sipping from a paper cup. A pouch of medicine rested next to him. Xavier made his way across the lot. Harold raised his gaze. I was surprised to find you here. I might express a similar sentiment. Harold gently touched the surface of the bench. Take a seat, if you have a moment. Xavier took action. They lingered in quietude for a brief moment. Harold inclined his head thoughtfully. That girl Mayla is in charge now. She is at the forefront of it. Indeed, that sounds positive, Harold remarked. The atmosphere has shifted. It's not more boisterous, merely more constant. Xavier inclined his head with deliberation. That is our goal. Harold savored another sip. Individuals recall the emotions you evoke in them. That's the sole section that remains memorable. Xavier remained silent. There was no necessity for him to do so. He remained in that spot until the sun sank beneath the skyline and the streetlights flickered on with a soft hum. In the month that followed, Store 9 appeared and resonated as an entirely transformed environment. The transformations were not the result of a renovation or a rebranding effort. No fresh indications, no eye-catching phrases were present. Yet, the atmosphere held a calm resilience, as if something broken had been mended and supported by those who knew the essence of creating anew. In the break room, a fresh schedule was displayed on the corkboard. It exhibited a greater level of cleanliness and harmony. No one was pulling 6 consecutive closing shifts anymore. Mayla stood by the fridge, clipboard secured under her arm, as she went over a delivery log with Lewis, who had recently stepped into the role of kitchen lead. His grasp of English was minimal, yet she articulated her words deliberately, gesturing to particular line items until he responded with assurance. Next week, we'll be changing our supplier for the eggs, she mentioned. Fewer instances of breakage, and they are offering us a more favorable rate for bulk orders. Louis lightly drummed his fingers on the list. We continue to have the same delivery day Tuesday mornings, but I'll reach out to the route manager if there are any changes. Louis flashed a thumbs up before heading back to the prep station. Xavier lingered at the edge of the hallway, arms folded, observing the interaction unfold without intervening. He was absent from oversight. He was present to lend an ear. He entered the kitchen and took a pair of gloves from the dispenser. The morning team had reported in short, and the register was already overwhelmed. He seamlessly adapted to the flow, managing orders effortlessly without inquiring about the function of each button. Even now, years after stepping away from the line, he still recalled the art of interpreting the rhythm of a breakfast rush. Once the wave receded, he took a towel and began to clean the front counter. The familiar faces began to arrive. Some he knew by sight, while others were recognized by their unique rhythms. A woman clad in a navy windbreaker, consistently dividing a single biscuit meal between her twins. A once diligent bus driver, meticulous in counting exact change before placing an order. Then Harold made his entrance. This time, he didn't have his cane. Still sluggish, yet more erect. He surveyed the counter, noticed Xavier, and offered a brief nod before joining the line. The coffee's fresh, Xavier remarked as Harold approached the front. Harold let out a soft laugh. I would certainly hope so. I showed you how to do it last month. I have been honing my skills. You certainly had me convinced. Last week I was served decaf. Xavier glanced at Mayla. There is a merchant in our midst. She remained focused on the training packet in front of her, not lifting her gaze. Inform Harold that he should consider himself fortunate I didn't impose an additional fee. Harold smiled broadly, then inched nearer to Xavier. This location was once merely a brief pause in my journey. Habit, a way to occupy the hours. Harold's gaze shifted to the kitchen, where Louis was passing a plate to a young trainee. At this moment, it seems as though something is restraining. Xavier filled his cup with coffee and gently pushed it across the counter. Thank you for your kind words. Once Harold settled into his seat, Xavier retreated to the kitchen, where the district manager Greg casually leaned against the cooler, clipboard in hand. A delicate glimmer of perspiration adorned his forehead. He had been manning the register for the last hour, his stance revealing a discomfort that suggested he was unaccustomed to prolonged standing. Xavier inquired, "Does your back still hurt?" Greg gave a slight nod. "I had no idea this floor was crafted from stone, more advantageous than acquiring it while standing before a group of teenagers." Greg presented a sheet of paper. "The audit is complete." Xavier examined it closely. The document outlined trends in turnover, scores of employee satisfaction from a recent internal survey, and a detailed analysis of incident logs. A single line captured his attention. "What's the story behind Store 13? Greg winced. "Comparable. Challenges to those you observed here. New manager, yet the conduct remains unchanged. I have already flagged it. We're addressing it before it escalates." "Excellent." Greg crossed his arms. Mayla's name has been mentioned frequently, not just in this context. Other stores are inquiring about her onboarding process. She's leading her team. "She is cultivating trust," I observed. Xavier glanced at the monitor showcasing the drive-through queue. It glided effortlessly, far better than it had in weeks. "Do you believe the others are prepared to take the plunge as you have?" Greg inquired. Xavier stated that they will be. "We refuse to allow distance to cloud our vision once more." Greg adjusted his stance. "Have you ever considered simply taking a step back and allowing the system to operate on its own?" Xavier gave a slight shake of his head. "Systems can experience failures. People will hesitate if you provide them with a reason to do so." Greg chose not to engage in a dispute. Later that afternoon, Xavier stepped into the modest office nestled behind the dry storage shelves. Mayla sat at the desk, crafting a performance review for one of the newer hires. She maintained a relaxed posture, yet her tone conveyed a sharp focus as she addressed the recorder. Powerful engagement with customers requires assistance with time management, suggesting 2 extra shadow shifts prior to granting register clearance. She pressed the stop button and faced Xavier. "Have you ever considered turning these into a digital format?" she inquired. "Every word resonates more profoundly when it is voiced. Avoid sounding too corporate." "I suppose. It feels a bit strange to be speaking into a microphone." "You'll adapt to it in no time." She reclined in the chair, extending her legs leisurely. "A woman who visited us last week sent an email," she mentioned. The girl at the drive-thru recalled her son's allergy without needing to be prompted. He acknowledged her words, a silent understanding passing between them as she revealed it brought tears to her eyes in the car. Mayla regarded him, noting that such matters defy the confines of a spreadsheet. "Do you ever find yourself concerned about it slipping away once more? We address it now, yet a year later, it begins to fade away." "Certainly do. What's the strategy moving forward?" He delved into the drawer and extracted a petite black notebook. Within were sheets filled with scrawled observations, identities, timestamps, and events he had encountered throughout his week of covert work. He turned to the final page and presented it to her. He stated that you are included in it. You hold individuals accountable. You guide the upcoming Mayla, and when they are prepared, you demonstrate how to replicate the process. She turned the pages quietly, then shut the notebook and placed it on the desk. "I'll hold the line," she stated, not as a vow, but as an undeniable truth. That evening, the store held its inaugural team dinner. Nothing overly fancy, just a few folding tables gathered in the dining area after hours, accompanied by trays of catered food from a local establishment run by one of Xavier's long-time friends. No speeches, just laughter, inside jokes and a playlist curated by the crew. Xavier didn't occupy the head of the table. He positioned himself centrally, flanked by the new dish crew and the night shift runner who had recently completed her probation week. He absorbed the words around him, allowing silence to fill the spaces between thoughts. At a certain moment, Louis got to his feet and lifted his soda can high. For the one in charge who mastered the fryer, he remarked with a grin, and laughter swept through the room like a tide. Mayla lifted hers next. For those customers who consistently showed up, even during times when we may not have deserved their loyalty, Xavier raised his in silent acknowledgement. As the evening deepened, He ventured outside for a breath of fresh air. The night was devoid of a moon, yet the parking lot lights illuminated the pavement with a gentle radiance. A distant bus rumbled by. A handful of vehicles lingered in the far vicinity, while patrons finalized their drive-through requests from the late shift adjacent. Harold found himself once more on the bench, leisurely sipping from a to-go cup. He raised his gaze as Xavier drew near. "Are you still around?" Xavier inquired, patiently awaiting the dispersal of the crowd. "I heard there's cake. You've let the opportunity slip away." 10 minutes ago they claimed the final slice, and Harold smiled. "I will endure." They lingered in quiet contemplation, their eyes fixed on the storefront. The interior exuded warmth, brimming with life. "You see," Harold remarked, "establishments like this don't merely serve food. They support them when all else is crumbling." "I lost track of that for a bit," Xavier remarked. Wearing a disguise to jog his memory, Harold gazed at him. "Then just leave it on partially." Xavier shifted his gaze in his direction. "What do you mean by continuing to appear? It doesn't need to be in disguise. Simply exist in the moment. Your presence will resonate with them." He nodded with a deliberate slowness. Within the space, the volume of the music was cranked up. A handful of voices erupted in laughter. The sound of plates clinking filled the air. The atmosphere of a location transformed from mere existence to vibrant life. Xavier stood, dusting off his hands. "I'll accompany you to your vehicle." Harold stood up with great caution. "Thank you for that." They strolled across the lot side by side, taking their time to reach the steps. Two men stood beneath the gentle glow of parking lot lights, each aware that a change had occurred, not in the brand, not in the figures, but within the very essence of the people. And that, at last, proved to be sufficient.